They rejected a single dad at every luxury garage, until his car stopped an entire auto show, 47 luxury automobiles. That is how many cars sat gleaming under the glass ceiling of the Meridian Grand Auto Exposition in Charlotte, North Carolina, the morning of September 14th. 47 cars worth a combined total of somewhere north of $18 million. Lamborghinis, Koenigsegg's, a 1 of 11 Pagani Huayra that 3 separate billionaires had already tried to buy. And then there was the 48th car. It rolled into the service bay at 6:22 in the morning, driven by a man in a faded canvas work jacket, a 6-year-old girl asleep in the back seat, her arms wrapped around a stuffed brown rabbit with one missing eye named Biscuit. The car was a 1969 Dodge Charger, flat black primer, cracked windshield, one door that didn't quite close all the way. The head of the exposition's technical review board, a man named Victor Hale, looked at it through the glass for 4 full seconds. Then he laughed. 3 other people laughed with him. The girl woke up, and she pressed Biscuit against her cheek, and she looked out the window at the men laughing. And she didn't say anything. She already knew how this was going to go. She had seen it before. What none of them knew, what none of them could have known, was that in 6 hours, that flat black car would stop the entire show. Press passes would be set down. Conversations would go quiet. 47 other cars would become background. Stay with this one. It earns it. His name was Mason Holt, 31 years old. He had calloused hands and a 2-day beard and boots that had seen better decades. He had driven the Charger from Garner, North Carolina, which was 40 minutes away, and had taken him an hour and 25 minutes, because the car ran warm above 65 miles per hour, and he would push it. The girl in the back seat was his daughter Lily, 6 years old. Brown hair, gap in her front teeth, and a stuffed rabbit named Biscuit that went everywhere she went. Everywhere. Biscuit had eaten breakfast at the kitchen table. Biscuit had attended the parent-teacher conference in October. Biscuit had waited in the truck on the day they buried Lily's mother, 2 years, 4 months, and 11 days ago, because Lily had decided that Biscuit should not have to go to sad places. Mason parked the Charger at the side entrance to the Meridian Exposition Center, the way the registration form had instructed him to. He had filled out the form 3 weeks ago. He had paid the $200 submission fee from money he did not entirely have. He had listed the car's specifications, its history, its provenance, its restoration status. He had written, in the notes field, 1 sentence. This car has not been seen publicly in 31 years. He had not elaborated. He did not elaborate on things when he did not need to. He got out of the Charger. He opened the back door. Lily blinked at him, Biscuit tucked under her arm, her hair a small disaster from sleeping against the window. "We here?" she said. "We're here," he said. She looked at the building, glass and steel, the kind of building that was designed to make you feel small before you went inside. "Is Biscuit allowed in?" she said. "Biscuit goes wherever you go," he said. She nodded. Like this was the most reasonable thing anyone had ever said. Victor Hale was waiting near the service entrance with a clipboard and a headset, and the expression of a man who had already made 17 decisions before 8 in the morning and was confident every one of them had been correct. He was 51 years old, silver-haired, wearing a blazer with the Meridian Automotive Group logo embroidered on the chest pocket. He had run the technical review board for the exposition for 8 years. He was very good at deciding which cars belonged in this building. He saw Mason coming. He looked at the Charger. He looked back at Mason. He looked at Lily, who was holding Biscuit and studying the building's architecture with the focused curiosity of someone who had plenty of time. "Submission number?" Hale said. "May 1147, Mason said. Hale found it on his clipboard. He read the entry. Something in his expression shifted, not softened, sharpened. The way a man sharpens when he has identified a problem and is about to solve it. "Mr. Holt," he said, "I'm going to be direct with you because I think it's kinder than letting you unload. This vehicle doesn't meet the technical admission threshold for the Meridian Exposition. The bodywork is unfinished. The paint is primer. The interior, I can see through the window, is partially stripped. We have a standard, and this car doesn't meet it." Mason looked at him for a moment. "The form doesn't list a paint requirement," he said. "The form lists a presentation standard," Hale said, "which this vehicle does not meet." "I paid the submission fee," Mason said. "Which we will refund," Hale said. The headset crackled. Hale touched it once, listened, said 3 words Mason couldn't hear. A younger man materialized beside them. Early 30s, lanyard, tablet, and he looked at the charger the way people look at things they've been told to dismiss. "Can we help you load up?" The younger man said. His name was Derek Moss. He was Hale's assistant, and he had inherited Hale's way of making courtesy sound like instruction. Lily looked up at Derek. She pulled Biscuit tighter. Mason did not argue. This was the thing about Mason Holt. He never argued. He looked at the building. He looked at the charger. He nodded, very small, the way a man nods when he has heard something he expected to hear. "I'll move it," he said. This was not the first time. It was not the second time either. The first time they had turned him away, it was 3 years ago, and it was the Piedmont Classic Car Circuit in Raleigh. He had shown up with the charger in pieces, a rolling chassis and a short block engine in the bed of a borrowed truck. And a man named Garrett. Fosse had told him that the Piedmont Circuit did not accept project vehicles for evaluation because the liability insurance didn't cover cars that weren't drivable. Mason had explained that he wasn't asking for insurance coverage. He was asking for a technical assessment. Garrett Fosse had given him the card of a buddy who bought project cars by the pound. The second time was 18 months ago, a private collector's showcase in Greensboro. He had filled out their form, too, paid their fee, shown up with the charger running, primer coat on, and a binder of documentation that was 312 pages long. A woman named Patricia Dwyer had told him the showcase had a curated aesthetic, and the car's current presentation didn't fit the season's theme, which was Concours level finish. He had asked her what the season's theme had to do with a car's mechanical and historical significance. She had told him that was exactly the kind of question that showed he didn't understand what they were doing here. He had picked Lily up from his neighbor's house at 6:30 that evening. She had colored him a picture of the Charger. Flat black, one eye on the grill, Biscuit sitting in the driver's seat. She'd written at the bottom, in her careful 6-year-old printing, "Dad's car is good." He had folded it once and put it in the inside pocket of his jacket. He still had it. The morning after the Meridian rejection, Mason drove back to Garner. He stopped at the diner on Pine Street because it was Tuesday, and Tuesday was the day he and Lily got pancakes. It was not a tradition he had invented. It was a tradition that Elena had invented 4 years before the accident, because she had believed that some things should be reliable. He had kept it reliable. The diner was called Max. It had vinyl booths and a jukebox that cost $1.25 and a coffee that was made by someone who had been making coffee in the same way since 1987 and had no intention of changing. Lily sat across from him with Biscuit propped against the napkin holder and a short stack in front of her that was larger than she could ever finish and always tried to anyway. "The man didn't let us in," she said. It was not a question. "He said the car wasn't ready," Mason said. She considered this. She cut a piece of pancake very precisely. "Is it ready?" she said. "It's ready," he said. "Okay," she said. She went back to her pancakes. Biscuit watched the jukebox. There was one person in Charlotte who had known Mason Holt for 22 years. His name was Theodore Briggs, but everyone in the machine shop on Industrial Boulevard called him Theo, and he was 67 years old, and had the hands of a man who had spent those years in very direct conversation with metal. Theo ran a restoration shop called Briggs Iron. Not a garage, not a dealership, a shop. There was a difference, and Theo would explain it to you, and the explanation would take somewhere between 12 and 40 minutes, depending on how much coffee he had had. Theo had been the one who had recognized the Charger 7 years ago when Mason had bought it from a storage auction for $450 because nobody else in the room knew what they were looking at. Theo had walked around the car twice. He had opened the hood. He had straightened up and looked at Mason the way a man looks at someone who has just accidentally solved a problem they didn't know existed. "Do you know what this is?" Theo had said. "A project," Mason had said. "Mason," Theo had said. "This is the Callaway Charger." Mason had looked at him. "The one from '69, Theo had said. "The one that disappeared after the '93 Talladega show. The one that Ricky Callaway built in his garage in Macon, Georgia, and ran 2 demonstration laps on a closed course at 163 miles per hour in 1971 before the clutch let go, and he never showed it again. The one that 3 separate people have paid investigators to find in the last 15 years." He had put his hand on the roof. "This is that car." Mason had been quiet for a moment. "How do you know?" Mason had said. Theo had pointed. Stamped into the firewall, under 30 years of dust and surface rust, were 7 numbers and 2 letters. It was the Callaway chassis number. It was specific to one car on the planet. Mason had looked at the stamp for a long time. Then he had said, "Then I'd better do it right." That had been 7 years ago. The night after the Meridian rejection, Mason sat at the workbench in the garage behind his house, which was a small house on a street where most of the houses looked like each other, and he opened the binder. 312 pages, chassis records, engine build sheets. 2 letters from Ricky Callaway's son in Macon, Georgia, who had confirmed the history in writing. Dyno sheets. A copy of a 1971 photograph of Ricky Callaway standing in front of this exact car at a closed-course event in Alabama. A notarized appraisal from a man named Werner Bowman, who was a retired engineer and automotive historian with 40 years of credentialed expertise, who had assessed the vehicle at $1.7 million in current restoration state. Incomplete, primer coat, partially stripped interior, and whose written opinion stated that upon completion, the vehicle's fair market value would exceed $2.3 million. Mason set the binder on the workbench and drank his coffee. The garage was quiet. The Charger sat in the center of it, under a single work light, and it looked, in that light, like something that had been waiting a long time for someone to understand what it was. He heard the door from the house open. Soft footsteps. Lily appeared in the doorway in her pajamas, biscuit under one arm, hair standing in 3 directions. "You're supposed to be asleep," he said. "I know," she said. She came and stood beside him at the workbench. She looked at the binder. She looked at the car. "Is the car sad?" He thought about this. "Cars don't get sad," he said. "Biscuit does," she said. Biscuit's remaining eye caught the work light and gleamed once. "What are you going to do?" He looked at the car. "I'm going to take it back," he said. "To the building, to the building." She considered this. She reached out and touched the edge of the binder, very carefully, the way she touched things that were important. "Okay," she said. "Don't forget Biscuit's breakfast." She went back inside. He listened to her footsteps cross the kitchen and go up the stairs. He picked up his phone and called Werner Bowman at 11:14 at night. Werner answered on the second ring, because Werner Bowman had not slept past 5:30 in the morning in 20 years, and accordingly had no strong feelings about late phone calls. "I need you in Charlotte tomorrow," Mason said. "What time?" Werner said. "Early," Mason said. "I'll bring coffee," Werner said. The Meridian Automotive Group's communications director was a woman named Claire Sutton, 33 years old. She had been in the role for 14 months, appointed after a restructuring that had promoted 3 people and eliminated 8 positions and left her, somewhat unexpectedly, responsible for both the digital presence and the on-site operations of the Meridian Grand Auto Exposition. The board had wanted someone aggressive. They had given her a mandate that was essentially, make this thing matter. Make it the kind of event that gets talked about. Make it the kind of event that people fly in for. She was good at her job. She was also, in the way of people who are new to a position and have something to prove, sometimes quick to trust the wrong advisors. Victor Hale had been at Meridian for 8 years. He knew the operation. She trusted his judgment on technical matters because she did not have technical expertise, and she knew it, and she had been told he did, and nothing in 14 months had given her a reason to question it. She did not know that Victor Hale had a side arrangement with a consulting group called Prestige Automotive Partners. She did not know that Prestige Automotive Partners was partially owned by a man named Cameron Drake, who also happened to own 3 of the vehicles currently in the exposition, and who had, over the past 2 years, been very quietly ensuring that the exposition's curatorial decisions favored vehicles that were either owned by Prestige Partners or acquired through Prestige's network. She did not know that Cameron Drake had learned about the Callaway Charger 6 months ago from a secondary source and had spent 3 months trying to locate the vehicle's current owner and had failed, and had then implemented a backup plan which was to ensure that, if the car showed up at any regional exposition, it would not be admitted. She did not know any of this. Not yet. What she did know, on the morning of September 15th, was that her event opened to the public in 4 hours, and her assistant Madison's had just knocked on the door of her temporary office and said, quietly and with the specific careful energy of someone delivering complicated news, "There's a man here who was turned away yesterday. He's back. He has someone with him. And I think you should probably look at what he's carrying." Mason walked back into the Meridian service entrance at 7:48 in the morning. Werner Bowman walked beside him. Werner was 66 years old, compact, with white hair and glasses on a lanyard and a quiet authority that had nothing to do with volume. He was carrying a leather briefcase, the kind that was old enough to have developed a personality. Mason was carrying the binder, and Lily was carrying Biscuit, who was wearing the small red scarf Lily had tied around his neck that morning because she had decided it was a formal occasion. Derek Moss met them at the entrance. "Mr. Holt," Derek said. His tone was the managed courtesy of someone who has been instructed to contain a situation. "I explained yesterday that your vehicle—" "I'm not here about the vehicle," Mason said. "I'm here to speak with whoever makes the final decisions." "Mr. Hale makes the—" "Above Mr. Hale," Mason said. Derek looked at him. He looked at Werner, who simply looked back at him with the expression of a man who has outlasted many Dereks and expected to outlast many more. He looked at Lily, who was explaining something to Biscuit in a low voice, probably about the building's architectural features. "I'll check," Derek said. He stepped away. Werner leaned slightly toward Mason. "He's going to check with Hale," Werner said. "I know," Mason said. "Hale is going to say no," Werner said. "I know," Mason said. "Then we go above Hale," Werner said. "That's the plan," Mason said. Lily held up Biscuit. "Biscuit thinks the ceiling is very tall," she said. "It is," Mason said. "He wants to know if cars live here," she said. "Very special ones," Mason said. She relayed this information to Biscuit. Derek came back. He did not look comfortable. Behind him, and slightly to his left, was Victor Hale, who had the expression of a man who had made a very reasonable decision the day before, and was experiencing the peculiar irritation of that decision not staying made. "Mr. Holt," Hale said, "we covered this. You covered the admission decision," Mason said. "I'd like to speak with Miss Sutton." A brief pause. Hale's jaw moved slightly, The way a jaw moves when a man is deciding how to frame a refusal. Monsieur Sutton is managing final preparations. Then I'll wait, Mason said. He sat down. He sat down in the chair beside the service entrance, the way a man sits who has nowhere else he needs to be and all the time required to wait. Lily sat beside him. She put Biscuit on her knee and opened the small backpack she'd brought and removed a coloring book and 2 crayons, began working on a page that featured, as best as Mason could tell, a horse in a meadow. Werner remained standing. He set the briefcase down. He opened it. He removed, very precisely, a document that was 16 pages long, printed on paper with a letterhead that read, Bowman Automotive Appraisal Services, established 1984. He folded it to the page he wanted and held it at his side. Hale looked at the document. He looked at Werner. "And you are?" Hale said. "Werner Bowman," Werner said. "I've authenticated and appraised some of the most significant American muscle cars in private collection in the last 4 decades. I appraised the Peterson Museum's 67 Shelby in 2019. I did the valuation work on the Goldenrod collection before it sold at Barrett Jackson in 2021. I have a letter of professional standing from the Automotive Heritage Council, if you'd like to see it." He paused. "Would you like to see it?" Hale was quiet. "I'll get Miss Sutton," Derek said. Claire Sutton had not expected this morning to involve a car she had never heard of. A retired automotive historian with 40 years of credentials, a mechanic in a canvas jacket, and a 6-year-old girl coloring a horse while holding a one-eyed rabbit named Biscuit. But here she was. She sat across a folding table from Mason and Werner in a side room off the main exhibition floor, with Madison standing near the door, and a coffee she hadn't touched. And she was reading the appraisal document. She read it twice. She was not a technical person, but she was a communications person, and she understood, at a structural level, what she was reading. She understood what Callaway Charger meant when Werner explained it, the history, the 1971 closed-course run, the 31 years of disappearance, the provenance documentation, the chassis stamp. She understood what 1.7 million in current state, 2.3 upon completion, meant for the exposition's press coverage. She understood what it meant that this car had been turned away. She set the document down. She looked at Mason. "Victor said the car didn't meet the presentation standards," she said. "The form doesn't list a paint requirement," Mason said. She looked at the appraisal again. She looked at Madison, who was standing near the door with the careful blankness of someone who is watching. Something important happened and does not want to interrupt it. "Madison," she said, "can you pull the submission form guidelines for me?" Madison had them on her tablet in 11 seconds. She handed it to Claire. Claire read it. She read the line about presentation standards. She read the line about technical admission criteria. She read the line about historical significance as an alternative admission pathway, which was Section 4C of the form, which Mason had cited on his original submission, which Victor Hale had apparently not mentioned when he turned him away. Something in her expression shifted. It was not anger. Not yet. It was something closer to the particular clarity that comes when you realize you have been given the wrong information by someone who knew the right information. "When did you submit?" she said. 3 weeks ago, Mason said. "And Section 4C was on the form you submitted." "It was the section I cited," Mason said. He opened the binder to the copy of his original submission. The 4C box was checked. The notes field had his one sentence. He slid it across the table. She looked at it for a long moment. "I need 5 minutes," she said. She stood. She left the room. Madison looked at Mason and Werner and Lily, who had finished the horse and had moved on to what appeared to be the same horse, but in a different meadow. Madison said nothing. She had learned, in 14 months of working for Claire Sutton, that there were moments when the right thing was to be very quiet and very still, and let the situation develop. Biscuit sat on the table. He looked at nothing in particular with his one eye. Victor Hale was in the main exhibition hall when Claire found him. He was speaking with Cameron Drake, which she noted, though she did not yet know why she was noting it. Drake was 53 years old. Platinum cufflinks, the kind of compose that came from a lot of practice. He had a Maserati MC20 in the exposition. He had a Bugatti Chiron. He had a hand in more of the curation decisions than his official role, which was listed simply as sponsor and industry partner, might have suggested. "Victor," Claire said, "can I have a moment?" Drake excused himself graciously. He walked toward the Maserati. He did not hurry. "The Holt subdivision," Claire said. Hale's expression adjusted by about 3 millimeters. "That was enough. I explained the Section 4C, Claire said. Historical significance. He cited it on the form. Why wasn't it flagged for review? The vehicle's presentation. Victor, she said. I just read the form guidelines. The historical significance pathway is independent of the presentation standard. It has its own admission criteria. He cited it. You didn't bring it to me. Hale was quiet for 2 seconds. The 2 seconds were important. They were the 2 seconds of a man who is recalibrating, not reconsidering. There is a difference. Given the vehicle's state, he said, I made a judgment call. That wasn't your call to make, she said. That was mine. She held his gaze. He held hers. Something passed between them that did not have a name, but had a direction. I want the charger in the building, she said. I want it in Hall B, near the entrance. I want it in before 10. Claire, before 10, she said. She walked back toward the side room. Halfway there, something made her slow. She looked back. Hale had his phone out. He was walking toward the far end of the hall. He was walking toward where Cameron Drake was standing near the Maserati. She kept walking. She kept noting. The Callaway Charger rolled into Hall B of the Meridian Exposition Center at 9:47 in the morning. It was flat black. The windshield had a crack at the lower left corner. One door didn't quite close all the way, and Mason had put a small piece of folded paper between the door and the frame to keep it from rattling. The interior was partially stripped. The seats were reupholstered bucket seats from a supplier in Memphis who specialized in period-correct materials. The dashboard had 3 gauges and an expanse of bare metal where 4 others would eventually go. It was also, underneath all of that, a 528 cubic inch big block built from a combination of NOS components, period-correct sourcing, and 7 years of exacting mechanical reconstruction that had not yet been seen in public. It was also the car that had been missing for 31 years. It was also, according to one of the most respected appraisers in American muscle car history, one of the most significant unrestored survivor vehicles in private hands in the United States. 3 people stopped what they were doing when it came through the doors. Then 4. Then 11. Mason parked it in the spot that Madison had cleared in Hall B. He got out. He opened the back door. Lily climbed out with Biscuit under her arm, her red scarf slightly askew from the ride. She looked around at the other cars. She looked at the Pagani. She looked at the Lamborghini. She looked at a Shelby Cobra on a chrome stand with a spotlight on it. She looked at her father's car. I like ours, she said. He crouched beside her and straightened Biscuit's scarf. Me too, he said. The exposition opened to the public at 10. By 10:45, the cluster of people around the Charger was the largest in the building. Not because of the presentation. Not because of the chrome or the spotlight, which it did not have. Because Werner Bowman was standing beside it, quietly and answering questions, and the word had moved the way words move in rooms where people know things. That this was the Callaway car. That it had been missing since 1993. That the man standing near the driver's door in the canvas jacket was the one who had found it and spent 7 years rebuilding it from chassis level. A woman from Auto Week was there by 11. A photographer from a collector's publication that Mason could not have named was there by 11. 15. Someone was filming on a phone at 11:20, and then several someones were filming. Mason stood near the car. He did not explain himself. He answered direct questions with direct answers. He did not describe the car's significance in terms of what it would be worth, or what it meant for his situation, or what he hoped would happen. He described the engine build, the sourcing decisions, the specific challenges of rebuilding a car for which no manufacturer's manual existed, because the car had been a one-off. He used precise language, and he did not perform modesty, and he did not perform pride either. He simply described the work, the way a man describes work that has taken everything he had and that he did not regret. Lily sat on a folding chair beside the car with Biscuit on her lap and colored a picture of what appeared to be the exposition center. It was recognizable, which was impressive for someone who had never drawn a building before. At 11:47, Cameron Drake appeared at the edge of the crowd around the Charger. He stood there for 90 seconds. His expression was difficult to read, but not impossible. It was the expression of a man watching a situation move in a direction he had planned against, and that was moving there anyway. He left. He went toward the back hallway near the registrar's office. He made a call. Madison saw him leave. Madison had been watching since 10. She had noticed that Hale and Drake had spoken twice since the doors opened. She had noticed that Hale had made a call at 9:53, 2 minutes after the Charger was parked. She had a good memory for patterns. She went to find Claire. By 12:30, 3 things had happened that had not been in anyone's plan. The first was that a retired mechanical engineer named Arthur Mays had gotten close, enough to the Charger's engine bay to look at the block stamping, and had said, loudly enough for the 7 people around him to hear, "That's the Callaway stamp. I've seen photographs of that stamp for 30 years. That is actually the car." And the 7 people had told others, and that had rippled out through the hall. The second was that a journalist from a regional automotive publication had reached Ricky Callaway's son in Macon, Georgia, by phone, and Callaway's son had confirmed the history and the chassis number and had said, and this had been recorded and would be published by 3 o'clock that afternoon. My father spent the last 12 years of his life trying to find that car. He passed without knowing where it was. I'm glad it's been found by someone who understood what it was. The third was that Madison had found, in the registrar's correspondence files, an email chain that she had not been looking for, but that had become visible when she was pulling the original submission records for Mason Holt. The email chain was between Victor Hale and a business address registered to Prestige Automotive Partners. The earliest email in the chain was dated 6 months ago. The subject line was, Callaway Vehicle, Exhibition Exclusion Strategy. She had not read past the subject line. She had taken a photograph of the screen. She had gone to find Claire. She found Claire in the back hallway near the registrar's office. Claire was on her phone. She finished the call. She looked at Madison. Madison showed her the photograph. Claire read the subject line. She read it again. She looked up. "Show me the chain," she said. Victor Hale was in the hall near the Bugatti at 1:15 when Claire came to him. She did not take him aside. She spoke to him where he was standing, which was in front of 3 exposition staff members and a catering manager who was counting water bottles. "I've seen the email chain," she said. He looked at her. "The Prestige chain," she said. "The one about the Callaway vehicle." 3 seconds. "Claire, don't," she said. "I need you to step back from your responsibilities for the rest of the event. I need your credential and your headset. I'm going to ask Derek to handle your duties for the afternoon." His jaw moved. His shoulders moved. He was calculating something, and the calculation was not going well. "This is a misunderstanding," he said. "Return the credential," she said. He looked at the 3 staff members. They looked at their shoes. The catering manager concentrated very hard on his water bottles. Hale removed the lanyard. He set it on the table beside the nearest display stand. He left through the rear corridor without speaking. Claire picked up the lanyard. She looked at Madison. "Where is he?" she said. "Hall B," Madison said. "Fund Cameron Drake," Claire said. "Tell him his cars are being relocated to the auxiliary hall for inspection of their exhibition documentation." Madison did not smile. She had been working here for 14 months. She had gotten quite good at not smiling. Claire Sutton walked into Hall B at 1:44 in the afternoon. The crowd around the Charger had not thinned. It had grown. There were phones out. There were notebooks. There were people who did not look like journalists, but who would later turn out to be, in various capacities, important. She walked through the edge of the crowd. She found Mason standing where he had been all morning, near the driver's door, answering a question from a man in a red flannel shirt about the carburetor setup. He finished answering. He noticed Claire. He did not change his expression. He waited. "Mr. Holt, she's Sutton," he said. She looked at the car. She looked at the crowd around it. She looked at Lily, who had finished the drawing of the exposition center, and had moved on to something that appeared to be a very complex system of tunnels with Biscuit serving as some kind of supervisor. "I need to say something to you," Claire said. "All right," he said. She looked at him. She did not look away. "The decision to turn your vehicle away was wrong," she said. "The form had an admission pathway your submission cited correctly. That pathway was not honored. I was given incorrect information about the reasons for the rejection, and I did not catch it in time, and that is on me. I should have reviewed the decision before the event." She said it clearly. She said it where it could be heard by the people around them. She did not say, "I'm sorry you felt." And she did not say, "There may have been a misunderstanding." She said, "This was wrong, and here is exactly how it was wrong." Mason was quiet for a moment. "All right," he said. "There's more," she said. "The rejection wasn't only an oversight. There was a coordinated effort to keep this vehicle out of the exposition. I have documentation of it. I've addressed it this afternoon. The people responsible are no longer part of this event." Something moved through the crowd. Not noise, the opposite of noise. The kind of attention that comes when people realize they are watching something real. "I'd like to offer you a formal placement in next year's exposition," Claire said. "A featured placement, not Hall B, the center hall. And I'd like to formally recognize the Charger in today's event program, with a corrected entry, before the day is out." "You don't need to do the second thing today," Mason said. "I know," she said. "I'd like to anyway." He looked at her. She looked at him. "All right," he said. Lily had looked up from the tunnels during this exchange. She had been listening. She looked at Biscuit. She looked at her father. She looked at Claire Sutton, who was standing with her arms at her sides, and her eyes direct, and who had just said, in front of everyone who was there, "I was wrong." Lily stood up. She walked over to them. She held up Biscuit so he was at approximately eye level. "Biscuit says you were very brave," she said. Claire looked at her. Something in her face changed, not dramatically. The way light changes when a cloud moves. She crouched down. She went to Lily's level, fully, knees bent, eye to eye with a 6-year-old girl and a one-eyed rabbit in a red scarf. "Thank your rabbit for me," she said. Lily considered this very seriously. "Biscuit says you're welcome," she said, "and he says your building is very tall." Claire smiled. It was the kind of smile that comes from somewhere that has nothing to do with public relations or professional courtesy. "It is," she said, "but you're taller than you look." Lily thought about this. "Daddy says that too," she said. At 4 in the afternoon, Werner Bowman was still by the car, still answering questions, still carrying the briefcase that now also contained 3 business cards from people who had requested formal appraisal consultations. He was in the middle of explaining the difference between a documented survivor car and a full restoration when his phone rang. He looked at the screen. He stepped away from the crowd. He came back to Mason, who was standing near the back wall, watching Lily explain the Charger's engine to a man who appeared to be an actual racing driver based on the credential around his neck. That was Ricky Calloway's son, Werner said. He saw the photographs online. Already, Mason said. It moves fast now, Werner said. He wants to speak with you. He wants to, he said, to see the car. He said his father would have. Werner stopped. He adjusted his glasses. He was not a man who was prone to emotion in public and was finding this moment more challenging than expected. He said his father would have been glad. Mason looked at the car. It was not a celebration. It was not the moment from a film where the music comes in and the light hits the chrome, and everyone turns to look at the triumphant man. There was no music. There was no chrome on the car to speak of. The light was the standard exposition lighting, which was good but not cinematic. It was just the car, flat black primer, one cracked windshield, one door that didn't quite close, and the person who had found it and understood what it was and had spent 7 years doing the work correctly, and a 6-year-old girl who was currently explaining the ignition timing to a racing driver, with Biscuit tucked under one arm for reference, and who was, against all probability, making sense. "Tell him I'll call," Mason said. Werner nodded. He went back to his questions. Mason watched Lily for a moment. She had finished the ignition timing explanation and had moved on to what appeared to be a general philosophy of engines. The racing driver was nodding. He looked like he was learning something. At 4:53, they packed up. Lily put her crayons in the backpack. She tucked Biscuit against her side. She took her father's hand, and they walked toward the side exit, and the car stayed where it was, which was where it was supposed to be. In the parking lot, Mason opened the truck. They had come in the truck this time. The Charger would stay overnight with a formal security log in Mason's name. And Lily climbed in. She settled Biscuit on her lap. "Daddy," she said. "Yeah," he said. "Is the car happy now?" He looked at the building, glass and steel, the kind that was supposed to make you feel small. "I don't know if cars get happy," he said. She looked at Biscuit. "Biscuit thinks it probably does," she said. "A little." He started the truck. He pulled out of the lot. The building got smaller in the rearview mirror, and then it was gone, and the highway opened up ahead of them. And Lily was already asleep before they cleared the Charlotte city limits. One hand on Biscuit. Her head tipped against the window. Mason drove. He did not turn on the radio. He did not think about what came next, or what the next call would bring, or what Werner had said about market value and the implications of authenticated provenance in the current collector market. He thought about what Elena would have said. He thought she would have laughed, not at the exposition, at the tunnels. At Lily explaining ignition timing to a professional racing driver with an air of complete authority and a one-eyed rabbit as her co-presenter. She would have laughed and said, "Of course she did. Look at who her father is." He drove. The highway went north. The light was going thin and golden the way it goes in September in North Carolina, when the day runs long and the air begins to hint at something cooler coming. He drove.